Today is a very exciting session because we have been teaching online and students are and so what is when we and a lot of times unfortunately policymakers seem to think that it is just a matter of completing a mechanical technical requirement. Okay, we have had the classes, we have had the exams, we have taken the assignments, we've given them grades, we've given them their degrees, now they can all go away. So this whole business as usual attitude is a very big problem, and students and teachers, the activities of teaching and learning, this growing together, has been really suffering because of that. Is our understanding. So the idea here is, and a lot of things that happen in college which are not really mapped, which are not really, part of your result, or which are not really part of your NAC accreditation documents, which are not really part of, a certain kind of stated achievements. A lot happens in colleges, and a lot of that life in colleges is actually suffering. So because of that, we really need to think about how we can use our memories of a pre-COVID college space, of having taught and learned in colleges during COVID. What are the memories, anecdotes? What are the lessons that we can abstract from them, and what of them could be used as strategies? It's a conversation beginner, so of that sort. So today we have two wonderful sessions. One is listening to students, and second is sharing of experience by the faculty members. So the plan is first to listen to students. There are three of them. One is from Providence College, Aisha Anis, and the second person is from Delhi St. Stephen's College, but from Goa. And third is Avita Rodriguez, and third is Amila from the Abraham College itself. So they'll be talking about their experience, and after that we have faculty members. Uh, Benston, Dr. Abdul Nasir from Benston from St. Stephen's College, Dr. Abdul Nasir from NIT Calicut, Mithun Shah, who's from Farouk College, Dr. Abhilash from Geetam University, and Zainat Mistram, who's also faculty with the Abraham earlier, and vice principal, now currently teaching with uh, Farouk College with us. So we have an economic, we have students from commerce and BA program. We have teachers from economics, English, computer science, physics, and teaching English in an engineering college. Either university is an engineering. So that it's a kind of, it's just a way of getting to hear all of them. So this is actually designed as two sessions, but Benston, who's also a very active volunteer, who's been a volunteer of the Abram, has to leave. So I am going to sort of upset the plan a little bit and ask Benston to go first, giving an outline, and then we'll start the student session, and after that the faculty session. At the end of the faculty session, I would also request Bindu Amat from Providence College, who has also been very interested, who's been kind of a guiding person for this conversation, also to sort of compile all of that. So that's roughly the plan for today, these two sessions. And through these sessions, what are the things that we will understand about online teaching? So after for in about 10 minutes, each of the panelists would put down their memories, the lessons they got, the strategies they think that would work. And after that, yes, we can all ask questions we would, we can come up with our own experiences and all of that. And maybe, if I'm sure everyone has experiences and lessons and strategies to suggest. So if it's going sort of beyond our time, then in such case, please feel free to type them in the chat box or fill up the feedback session. So those ideas, we could benefit from those ideas, those thoughts, those experiences as well. When we compile this, and which is what we hope to do, we compile this as a series of conversations, and with its insights sort of recorded somewhere, we will be able to bring that also onto our documents, our documentation, our take it to our mind in terms of how to get on with it. So on that prefatory remarks, may I invite Benson to give an overview first. Benson.
Thank you so much, Ashley, and it's wonderful to be back with the Deyapuram people. I think it's apt that these conversations, again, the leadership perhaps is for the first time in Kerala, or maybe in other places also. If you look at it, not much has happened, and it's a happy thing that Deyapuram is taking the initiative again for something like this. Because I remember even when policymakers, educational sort of leaders were clueless about what was in store from July 2020 or June 2020, when things were supposed to reopen. I think Deyapuram was very quick to realize that there was going to be a new normal. There was, as told by Ashley, there was a survey conducted to understand preparedness of students and others in terms of devices, connectivity, and steps were taken. Even the Kerala government did many of the things only later on, and these things haven't happened in many of the other places. So it's wonderful that Deyapuram, as usual, is taking the leadership in many of these things. And these are conversations that have unfortunately not happened in places where it should have a long time ago itself, when we were starting with all this. I think it's important to, because we've sort of, it was a session meant for listening to students. I'm not going to take a lot of time. I'll just try and sort of maybe not get too much into my own experiences also, because then that would be sort of a different track altogether. But just try to give like a couple of things that maybe I also would be very keen in terms of what I want to listen or what I want to hear from some of our students. I remember the first time, like, we were all introduced to this whole idea of online teaching, like in Delhi. It was in March 2020. Suddenly, like, our spaces were closed, our classrooms, our colleges, our libraries. And then it was a struggle. It was a struggle basically just to stay online, as it is told over here, just to be connected, just to finish off things that we had started. Like, the syllabus had to be finished. People had to be taught certain things. The readings had to be completed. It was just trying to finish off sort of things that we had already done, like in the previous 7-8 months. Some of us had devices, so it wasn't really a problem, but it was more about understanding the different functionalities of those devices, things that it could do, which, for example, I had an iPad. I never realized what all it could do, the kind of videos it could make, editing it could do. So we were all doing that. We were trying to make videos, send it across to students, get them to read some material. The pandemic in many places was still news to many of us. It hadn't really reached our doors. We were all in sort of protected places, apartments, staying safe. Then sort of slowly distractions started coming in. The migrant crisis sort of started happening. We were hearing news about people starving, people, workspaces getting closed, no one to look after them. And still we thought of the classroom, and maybe in some places Zoom classes started, Google Meet, people started using. So we started meeting each other again. And we thought of these as possible distractions from all those other bad things that could be happening. Oh, I can get into my classroom, some work can happen, I can meet my students. So again, there was sort of an excitement when we were thinking about online teaching. it was a time to maybe see faces again, do some work, and get back to things that you were sort of comfortable doing. So there was some sort of excitement there. The semester got over somehow, exams were done. And then it was the first maybe formal round of online teaching where we were supposed to start a semester like teaching online, something which we were sort of never used to. So the preparations had to be different. It was never about just finishing off stuff. It was also about starting and creating and something entirely on sort of an online mode. Again, I should admit over here that there was some sort of an excitement because this was a new sort of a thing. It was about playing around with some of the things that you were not maybe entirely sort of comfortable with or have used. So I should say that I definitely had some excitement sort of going in. The pandemic had sort of reached some of our own. People were getting affected. So slowly, like the feeling of people who were sort of gathering in a meeting or anything was sort of changing. They were worried about sort of other things. Also, the first full paper that I taught, I started teaching and sort of finished entirely online, was a fairly technical paper. So that actually made life easier for me, if I am talking about my experience, because like students knew that, okay, it's a fairly technical paper, so they have to come to class, they have to pay attention. So class participation, I didn't have to worry so much about it, as some others had started sort of complaining that class participation was sort of going down. You don't know if they're there, no one is speaking up. So there's something sort of definitely happening slowly. Although initially there was some excitement everywhere, but slowly you started seeing. I was a little lucky, but of course, at the end of the day, I wasn't happy. I never felt like I taught a paper well, that it finished off well. Things were a little different when I taught a first year paper. It was a first year honors paper. And when I started teaching, this was in November when our classes started, and there was more excitement. The excitement lasted maybe an entire sort of semester. And that was maybe like the first proper lesson for me from this whole experience, because I just realized how much the excitement for a subject can be a substitute in terms of many other things that may not be going your way, or possible distractions, etc., that could be there. The first year lot, when they come to college, they're very excited. They're excited about the new subject, the new space. So that kept things going. So maybe a lesson for me over there was, yeah, maybe in other classrooms also, you should try and do something which would keep students sort of excited. They had things to look forward to than maybe things we were doing stuff. We were trying to do things together. But this sort of a difference between how a first year classroom reacted and how a senior class was sort of reacting was sort of a big difference for me, which I sort of observed. And that excitement sort of lasted throughout a sort of semester. Now, what I realized was soon, like with another semester. So we were all expecting that, okay, we'll start maybe teaching online, but soon we're going to get back to classrooms, which again did not happen. So we finished a semester online, or even for the first years who started sort of late. And then the new semester's teaching started for the senior classes. One could clearly see a fatigue in terms of just being online. And participation was never even close to anything that you would have in a normal sort of a classroom. And that's when I realized that, okay, we had defined online learning and online teaching as the new normal. So we were defining new normals in many of our methods, but we hadn't sort of redefined the normals in the ends that we were trying to achieve. So it was just, we had just shifted everything that we were sort of doing outside, and we're just trying to recreate all that in an online space. I think that was a fundamental sort of a mistake in what policymakers were trying to do, what educational administrations were trying to do. It was a realization for me that there's just no way in which what happens inside a classroom, you can just recreate all that in the virtual world. So if you were trying to sort of do that, in many places, that's what we were doing, right? So we never changed our syllabus. We didn't even bring down the magnitude of what people were supposed to do. We didn't really innovate when it comes to our assessment methods. So everything was, the ends that we were all trying to achieve was the same old stuff. Finish off the course, so they have to do an exam. The exams would look exactly like the same. And then we were sort of redefining like all our methods. There were new normals there, but forgetting that these are all methods to achieve sort of some ends, some learning objectives, perhaps something that they should be knowing at the end of the day. So that is where maybe the method for that was maybe an assessment, and many of those are the real ends that you were sort of trying to achieve over here in terms of like immediate ends. We hadn't really redefined any of those. So the problem that I see right now is that we are thinking of this kind of a setup as part of the new normal post-COVID also. So we're already thinking of online learning, online teaching to sort of be a very important part of how things are going to be after maybe things get back to some kind of normalcy. So post-COVID also, we're going to see online learning perhaps as part of that normal. That's where I think things are going to be problematic. And that's where these conversations have to start and get going, and maybe what we hear and what we see, what we listen over here can be a starting point of putting together something, and maybe trying to sort of have a new sort of a public debate going, maybe question some of the assumptions that people have already made in terms of how effective online teaching, etc., are going to be. It's often said that online teaching and online learning, online courses are basically going to be very student-centric. They're going to offer all kinds of flexibility. Students can proceed at their pace. It takes care of the diversities that are there. I think today would be perhaps an eye-opener for us in terms of understanding how true these things are. Are we talking about a method which is indeed student-centric, right? So if all that our teachers can perhaps do, maybe because of the constraints that they are under, maybe because of lack of training, etc., is maybe send notes through WhatsApp, or send how student-centric is that going to be, right? In terms of connectivity issues that we already know, accessibility issues, like we're talking about a central university like Delhi University with students from all over India, shifting things entirely online and expecting that to work. How student-centric has our sort of online learning? Because these are arguments that are put forward now in favor of moving to a world where the UGC, our own regulators, are already sort of talking about doing a course. 40% of your degree can be done online, and perhaps in no time this will reach 60%, 70%, etc. So keeping aside several quality concerns, etc., to what extent are these really going to be student-centric? To what extent is it going to offer flexibility as is being claimed? Did our students experience that kind of flexibility while they were doing this? I don't think my students at least faced a lot of flexibility because like when you work under a university system, there are limits to what you can do. And certainly I don't think the system provided a lot of flexibility to my students. They blame the current style of teaching or classroom teaching as very top-down. It's said that it's very teacher-centric. It's said that we're trying to do an approach which is a one-size-fits-all, like in a classroom. I would say that one of course can find a lot of problems with these arguments, and my own sort of experience is something where seeing the faces of my students are extremely important when I teach, right? So I'm someone who easily gets affected even when I see like one student getting distracted, right? So I very easily get affected. And teaching online with sort of not being able to see that when you're going off on a when you're maybe discussing a model and things are not getting clear, you can immediately see that on their faces, right? So that the argument that you're trying to make, the equation that you have wrote, it doesn't make sense to people out there. that's going to be very visible on their face. And there's something that I can do when I see that. Maybe just I don't have to ask anyone, but on many occasions I don't have to ask anyone. I can just see that and I can just redo the whole thing. I can just maybe go back, explain it once again. Here, there's just no way of doing that. And I'm dependent on maybe them asking, and they are unsure whether they should ask or not sometimes. And are they the only one who didn't get it? I think these are problems. Initially, we thought like, okay, there are some students who have become more responsive in the online sort of a setup, but I don't think that is something that's sustained. Later on, I think we were back to sort of, there were things that I could do in a classroom just by seeing someone's face, like they were looking a little flustered, like they're looking a little lost, and they were just here with me till the previous sort of line, and now they lost. So I think there was some issue in perhaps how I stated that, or I should just redo it. These signals are completely lost. So I'm not entirely sure whether a classroom and what was getting delivered over there was always a one-size-fits-all approach. I think there was a lot a teacher could do in that sort of a space. So we have to sort of actually have some. Someone may have to unmute Ashley.
Right. Yeah, Vincent, in a couple of minutes, could you just...
Yeah. I'm just, yeah. So I think it's a question of asking everyone, like, what all can be recreated online, right? So I think listening to our students would sort of tell us how much they've sort of seen, from what they've seen, like how much was the system able to sort of recreate online. And if you're not able to do that, then it's not worth pursuing that route. It's somewhere where we have to think of new ways of sort of doing things. It's also important to realize that this was a forced upon thing. We were never ready for something like this. And it was a compromise that we were sort of making. And to use this and only maybe some aspects to pick up on that, and then maybe make that as part of the policy going forward, is just going to be a very, very bad step to take. I hope these conversations give people more light in terms of what exactly were our students expecting when they came into the sort of online setup, how prepared they were, how prepared was the system, and were they able to participate, how accessible it was, and to what extent maybe they benefited from being at their homes and being able to attend classes, and what was they really missing about maybe their hostels, their classrooms, their colleges, their extracurricular activities. So I wish everyone a very happy time listening to each other, something that doesn't happen a lot these days, and I hope we can learn a lot from that exercise. Thanks, and if I get free early, I'll try to be back soon.
Right. Thank you, Vincent. Like, one of the things is that, you know, the big problem I find with the insights I would take away from Vincent's talk is that, you know, the end deciding the means is a problem, and we didn't redefine the academic ends. So that's one thing to take forward, I think. Now we come to the most exciting part, which is listening to students. And before that, can I just ask the system administrator, whoever is in charge, to change the settings so that everyone can sort of unmute themselves at will? You know, that would make the conversation a lot more, because I don't think that has happened. I said that, but I don't know if it's possible once you set the meeting in a certain way. My technology know-how is pretty bad. If it is possible, I think please do that. All right, so let's now listen to students. You know, and Benson was talking about student-centric learning. You know, it's like how did they perceive this, how did they take themselves through this is a very important part of our work. So we have Aisha will speak first, and then Evita, and that'll be the order. So Aisha, could we yeah, could you please start? Yeah.
Hello.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, I'm audible, I hope.
Yes.
I'm Aisha Anas, and I am a BCom final year student from Providence Women's College. So I had my final year during the pandemic, which itself is kind of unhappy because we had a lot of expectations about, coming to college as the seniors, and a lot of things we were planning to do that didn't happen. So a few things about online learning is I'm actually not really new to this in the sense that I was preparing for a certificate course on my own in 2018 and 19. So I was kind of used to reading the material on my own and Googling a few topics here and there, and maybe posting a few questions, doubts on forums, and slowly finding my own way through the thing. So I thought I would be prepared for online learning, but well, a few things happened which were kind of new. One thing I noticed is that before the pandemic, if you Google something on YouTube, or if you search for something on YouTube, you might find the topic, but then it'll be either too vast or really short. So it won't be exactly what you're looking for. But after the pandemic happened, what happened was so many teachers were uploading classes and putting up videos for their own students, and this was available to you on YouTube. So that was really nice because you had more resources now, and you had exactly what you might find the topic that you wanted, and whatever content is there in your syllabus, you'll find that on YouTube. And that was kind of good because you didn't have to rely on just one instructor. You could find someone else who maybe you understood better, or maybe who was teaching at your own pace. And talking about pace, like Benston sir said, it is true. You can go at your own pace. You can either watch these videos every day, or maybe, maybe cram it a week before the exam. That was also possible if you wanted to do that. You can actually even change the pace of the instructor. If you can grasp quickly, you can go at double speed and listen to them, run through the material. Or if there was something that you didn't understand, you don't have to ask them to repeat. You can just rewind it and replay it. So those were good things actually. But then the problem with that is that it's really hard to stay disciplined because there are all these advantages, and you have a little bit of confidence in yourself, and you slowly get to this point where you feel like, okay, I'm not going to sit through these few days. I'm gonna let it pile up. So that also could happen. So if you're in a classroom, there's at least that pressure of the teacher staring at you, or the exams that are going to happen. So that keeps you a little more focused. But then when you're sitting at home and doing online education, it's really hard to lose that focus. And we had internal exams and internal assessments, but they turned out to be more open book than anything. And I think losing that support system, losing that feeling of being in class and being with your classmates and your batchmates and having college activities, losing that was not really good mental health wise, because now you're pushing through all of these things on your own, and you don't have anywhere to vent out. You don't have somebody to support you through this. You have social media, and you can catch up with your friends on maybe a call or social media, but then it's not the same as being in face-to-face conversations. So that really took a toll, and that was one thing which I really hoped was different. Apart from that, I think there's a lot of free time with online education because you're going at your own pace. You can, if you want, you could take up a few projects on the side, or maybe do an internship, or take up courses other than that. But with all of this, you need to have discipline. Discipline is one of the main things that I think I learned that I really needed for online education and this new system. So those were a few things that I thought I'd share today.
Right. Okay, Aisha, that's very insightful. You could readjust your pace or something that we didn't think of at all. And I really didn't. And yes, discipline is a bad word in many ways. In many ways it is. But the point is, like, when somebody else imposes it on you, it's one thing, but you need to self-discipline yourself. It's kind of a different point. So very, very insightful sort of comments from your side. Thank you so much. We'll come back to you. I mean, after listening to all three of you, Evita and Amila, we'll come back and we'll round this up. Yeah. All right. Evita, now you're on.
Yes. Thank you, Professor Ashley, and everybody at the Appuram College for inviting me to be here. When Professor Ashley was actually explaining this series and this session in particular, I think before he could even complete the sentence, I said, yes, I'd love to be there and love to do that. And I think a lot of that excitement and eagerness came from the fact that it's been a long and almost endless year where no one has really stopped to ask us what we think, how we. I mean, of course, in personal capacities, our professors reach out to us and speak to us and check on us, but in an institutional way, in ways that we can influence how policies happen, or not even larger national policies, even how things happen in our own colleges in terms of teaching, we've not really had a say. And I think, and the hope and expectation is that this sort of unilateral decision making will kind of stop, and students are treated as mature people who have opinions. I know of a few institutions this year who've set up committees where students are representatives there and weigh in on decisions, and not just token representatives of student views. And I think that's something really important when, especially, I mean, it's important pre-pandemic as well, but especially now when you have such wide changes happening, to like have proper student representation on these committees and have them weigh in, and that not only will that make sure that these decisions that faculty and administration take, not only are they more meaningful, but then they will be implemented better when students feel like they've had a place at the table. But I think the premise through which I'd like to approach this is that I don't think all the problems that we're seeing with teaching and learning and the education system at large, I don't think all of it was born out of this particular year online. I think a lot of it predated the pandemic, and that's something that we don't talk about. Of course, the pandemic and the shift online made things significantly worse because of accessibility challenges, because we couldn't meet our professors, so many things. But a lot of fundamental questions in terms of what is the meaning or the purpose of the education we're getting, how effective is the evaluation mode, how are what Professor Ashley was saying, things that NAC doesn't measure, things like interpersonal relationships, cultural growth, how good is that, how effective is that? I think these are a lot of questions that predated the pandemic, and I mean, we start thinking about how effective were things, and I think the couple of points that I have in mind, I see that a lot of them really stem before the pandemic, and it's been made worse significantly. But that's how I'd like to think about this. So first, I think the excitement that Benson sir was speaking about, I personally didn't have that excitement, and perhaps it's because I'm a final year student. And I see a lot of my friends and people like me who are graduating this year really fundamentally asking what is the point or the meaning or the purpose of the education that we're receiving. Is it to provide us with certain skills, prepare us for jobs? Is it to empower certain students and the communities that they come from? Is it to help us think critically? Is it to help us become more self-aware? And I don't think any of these things are mutually exclusive. I think all these are important goals that need to be arrived at. But I think on all fronts, I don't think these were sufficiently achieved or reached. And I think the reason for that, and this again predates the pandemic, is because our learning is so content heavy. And like It's just about these are the readings and the content and the facts that students must learn and then reproduce in an exam. Again, the evaluation mode that predated the pandemic, that didn't work then effectively, and especially didn't work now. How it's gotten worse is that pre-pandemic, even if I had 5 classes which were very rigorous and content heavy, it was spaced out, and in between I would have meetings with my friends where we would discuss things. I would be doing other things in college. You would be organizing for certain things, and so it didn't feel so heavy. Now, when you're sitting at home, where online classes are the only mode in which you really interact, like you feel you're a part of college, when you have 5 heavy classes where information is being thrown at you, there's no space for critical engagement, it really leaves you wondering, what is the point. And one is definitely the evaluation mode, and I saw the difference because while I'm giving 3 exams this semester, the fourth is I'm undertaking a dissertation, which is something that very few students knew about and really avail of this opportunity. And I really feel out of the 4 papers that I took, it was the only space for me to critically think, that I worked individually with my advisor. I worked on a project. I was reading different things, critically engaging, analyzing, and I really felt it was the only space that I learned, as opposed to other classes where I was just taking in information that professors were providing. I had different kind of classes this year. Some classes where there was some amount of critical engagement, some where there was barely any. Some where there were efforts to have critical engagement and have students ask important questions, but there was always this pressure that we have so much of syllabus and we're not reaching those targets and we need to complete that. And when syllabus is the primary metric, and completion of syllabus is the primary metric to measuring how our progress or how well educated we are, these kind of discussions then become secondary and ancillary. So in cases where professors were really struggling to meet targets, it's okay to push aside and this is not coming from a point of blame. It's of course the system that constructs how fast paced this is. And I think this leads me to argue for a very necessary slowness that we need to bring into our university system, because learning as it is content agnostic. People don't become smarter or more intelligent human beings by giving us more information that we could find on Google. I think we become more mature and thinking human beings by ability to ask questions. And one is because I'm thinking about this in an individual capacity when I think about how much I've learned. But on a deeper level, I think particularly at this point, I'm graduating where everything around me is collapsing. Structures as I knew it are collapsing. Things have to be reimagined. Things have to be rethought. And I'm just asking myself, has the education that I've received in the past 3 years equipped me for this in any way? Because if you think about how we've been taught, and I had half my education on campus and half of it online. Of course, online learning was significantly compromised engagement. But I look at it holistically, and I think it the nature of education has largely been about feeding us with these facts and content. And if we're lucky, we've had some professors we could have more meaningful conversations with. But it's largely taught you to be part of a system and to operate in a system, to comply with a system. Now, when I'm graduating at a place where everything is failing, and what I need to be doing is being able to question things, being able to look at things systemically, being able to reimagine things as they are. And I don't think the education I've received and most definitely not this last year online, has not really equipped me for that. So I think, given how things are changing around us, I think our education also has to be dynamic. In that we teach like students to ask critical questions, don't really accept facts for a given in response to how we're seeing things change around us. Um, and so I think one thing that hinders this sort of critical engagement is definitely the slowness. Is the fast pace, and which is why we need to sort of insert some amount of slowness. But it's also our evaluation mode. Professor Benson taught me economics in my first year, and I remember him categorically saying that the evaluation system will not ask these things, but I want you to critically engage with these things, and I want you to think beyond the syllabus. So I'm teaching you these things, and that was great. And we all need professors that do things like that. But at the end of the semester, before the exam, no matter how interested or how much you love the subject, if you know that the exam system is going to ask like this 5% of the syllabus, but it's going to ask only these formulas and these models and only want you to mug up things and put it down, it's very disincentivizing. And it's even more disincentivizing in an online mode where there's little scope for interaction. But this evaluation mode, I think, really deters you irrespective of what your faculty members' intentions may be. And so, and also when we reimagine how we want to be teaching students, now we're also thinking that it's not enough to have students who have all these thoughts and who are academically meritorious. It's important that you have students that are empathetic and kind, and these values are increasingly important in this world. And I'm looking back at the system and thinking, how is it encouraged that? I mean, we're not asking for value education. I mean, teaching students particular values through curriculum has never really been helpful. But I think Professor Apurvananand, who is a professor at Delhi University, he wrote a very important piece about how universities are really responding to the crisis, whether it was the migrant crisis or COVID. And you have not really seen institutional response. You've seen students doing things in spite of what the university has been saying. And so I think what's really important is for universities to sort of set the ball rolling, to create examples for students, that you are encouraged to help people at this point. You are encouraged to share the knowledge that you have with other people. And I think those are really important ways for us to set the ball rolling. And the last one, I think, and I don't know how far this will be a personal point from my side, but I know that I really benefited from my university experience through a lot of activities of political organizing and resistance, and I think that teaches you a lot of things that you don't learn within classroom. And of course, that has completely been hindered. And it's something, first of all, that universities are always against. Somehow, angry students or students asking critical questions is always looked at negatively. And I think your ability to meet people and discuss and mobilize and come to compromises and negotiate and speak with authorities, I think that is something that completely goes away in an online mode where you are in your individual, you're behind your screen and in your four walls. So I think that is something that I see first year students in my college really missing out from. And I think that is something to think about, how we can get students to think beyond themselves, even in an online mode. And I know that a lot of focus of this conference will be about teachers and students, but I think a lot of learning also happens from your own peers. And that is significantly hindered in online education, where you're only learning from a professor, but scope to learn from your own batchmates and your own peers and own seniors. I think that is really compromised. So how do we think about that? And lastly, just to conclude, this week, a junior member from our institution passed away, and I think it was an eye opener for us that we were all treating this online mode of learning as something that was very temporary. A lot of us thought that we weren't in these interpersonal relationships, or how we engage with each other outside the classroom. At the back of our minds, it was, we'll meet when things reopen, and that's when we'll engage. From a learning point of view, even professors would say, this is just a temporary thing. When we meet, we'll engage with students in more meaningful ways. We'll do a lot of things then. And I think the reality is that reopening and having the kind of system we had before the pandemic is a distant future. So this time in between, how do we make it more meaningful? I think perhaps we need to stop looking at it as something that's temporary. And whatever time we do have, how do we make it meaningful? How do we allow students to interact beyond their departments? How do we allow them to learn from peers? I think this was really a big eye opener to us in even the 6 months or 9 months that we had. How meaningful was that education? We were constantly just firefighting, just everything was just about getting through the next exam or getting through the syllabus, but like how meaningful, given that everything is so uncertain and everything is so fragile, this education in between, how meaningful was it really? And at what point do we stop looking at this as a temporary phase to make it more meaningful? So I think that's about me. I'd be happy to take questions and add things later on. Thank you.
Right. Thank you, Evita. That one line that sort of sort of reverberates with me is that I'm graduating when everything around me is collapsing. That encapsulates all the ethical, emotional, social concerns, and it in some sense asks us what are we doing in colleges and universities. Yeah. So now we go into the third speaker, Amila.
Yes, sir.
Yes, you're there. Please. You're
Am
on.
I audible, sir?
You are. Yeah.
Good morning, everyone. I hope and pray that you all are doing well and safe. And thank you for giving this opportunity to share my experience and views on online learning and teaching. I am a student of BCom first year, so it's been a year since this pandemic started and my online education has started. And I actually reckon that it's great to receive online education amid the pandemic, because to be honest, this pandemic hasn't been easy on us, because there's a great pause on certain jobs, fields, and industries, etc. And we know that education plays a vital role in life. And just like as quoted by Nelson Mandela, education is the most powerful weapon we can use to change the world. And I'm glad that there's no pause in the case of receiving education. It's continuing. And the rapid movement in technology and internet has made education interactive and easy. Also, we can witness a significant increase in the use of technology in the education worldwide. I joined in from the previous year. By November, I was admitted to this college, and since then it's online education for us. At first, I had only a nebulous idea about this online education, as if it's going to be beneficial or efficient. I was in agony. No, agony would be too much of exaggerated word, but still, I couldn't think of it how it would happen, like if it was efficient or if it's going to be efficient or not. And I thought the things that I'm going to miss, like college life, fun times with my friends, etc. And I didn't think that this would be as efficient as it is now. But it all went the other way around. I have great teachers and friends, although I just have one teeny tiny complaint that it's virtual, not real. But that's okay, because the world is fighting against the pandemic together, and everyone needs to stay safe and take it in a positive way. As the Gen Z millennials would say, Gen Z would say, it is what it is. We have to accept and move on with it. Also, we had sessions other than our regular classes, to name a few, like Amalgam Conclave, Thinking Physics, and Gender and Contemporary Cinema and its Cultural Impact, where certain people would talk to us and give lectures which were pretty inquisitive, as it helps us to nurture our thoughts and thinking. Actually, those type of educational sessions are also important, because education is not only about learning of facts, but the training of the mind. And I could be a part of NSS club. As a part of the club, we had to involve in social activities such as planting seeds or helping. We get messages in groups to get involved socially. So it was fun to do in that way. Involving in a club and making it useful to environment socially. So it was fun doing that. And I got to mention teacher support too. Teachers are giving us a great support, and they're taking a great effort to make us understand the concept to go through this pandemic. So, understanding the concept and educating us, even teachers find it difficult, because they have many classes, and even though in spite of all that, they're doing great. And for me, especially moving from abroad to India, I find it difficult to cope up with the system there. So teachers would comfort me and say, even said the single silly things, that what everyone in India knew that I didn't know. So they comforted me, taught me all those silly things. So they were a great support to me. And this is all what I had experienced within a year. And sir, am I audible?
You are. Yeah, go on.
Yeah, and I hope so. A few more months, it's gonna be online still, and gotta make it as productive as possible. So that's my views on and my experiences during this online class.
Right. Okay. Thank you, Amila. So that gives us a sense of somebody who hasn't. We had 2 third years who are passing out now, and one person from the first year who uh, joined in November and actually, figuring out way around college. So one quick question. So it was a very interesting talk, Amila. Where you talked about how technology helps us, keep up like this and so on and so forth. And also the Mandela's idea of how education is a powerful tool and is the only tool we have for social change. So one question is like in terms of your this is just before we go on to other people, in terms of your expectations, we always say college years are the best years of your life and all that, right? And then when you arrive there, it's a future that never was. It's suddenly an online sort of a thing. I mean, was there things that okay, this is what I would have done, and did you have and then you mentioned the great support of teachers and the whole other things that you get. All of that is great, but in terms of your expectation and all of that, were you able to figure out ways of actualizing them, or you thought it is what it is, and then one has to acknowledge this and then say that till such time this is how it's going to be. So what was your impulse there like?
Actually, after my boards, even my boards, 2 exams were cancelled because of this COVID-19. After that, it was like a sad few months because there was nothing to do. We are all stuck in a pandemic, and I was excited. I was admitted to a new college, new people, new life there. I had expected a lot in terms of meeting. I thought that it would be starting, our college classes would be starting by the next year, but still, and but I learned to cope up with it because we got no other way. Uh, this is what we have to do as online education. Yeah.
All right, that's very interesting. Can we now have questions from the listeners, from the teachers, as in whatever we need to ask our students, because we have 3 student representatives here from different givens and with different experiences. So, any questions, comments, observations? Is the unmute problem solved? I don't know how is that taken care of? Are we all able to unmute ourselves? That's the first thing. If not, just put it in the chat box. That I'll take it. Can somebody just try? Are you able to unmute yourself and let me know? Sudeshnamis, could you try and unmute? The host has to allow even now. Okay, that's not going to work. I mean, just a second. We'll have to do something about it. I don't know if this is a possibility. This is something that we cannot change in the middle of a meeting. Let me just try.
Sir, I think those who would like to unmute, they can just type their name in the chat. Then the co-host could unmute them.
That's a good suggestion. Yeah, could we do that? Yeah, I've just spoken to the system person. So I hope that will be taken care of. But in the meantime, like Twinkleman suggested, if you could just type your name, we could unmute you.
Yeah, I think we could probably raise a hand, and then that is also possible, I guess.
Yeah.
Till the
Okay.
yeah, but anyway, it was a very engaging session where we heard some diverse points of view expressed by the students, and I realized how important it is to get the student feedback, things that we normally would not have observed. I think there were some very, very valid points made during the session, some important feedback regarding the pace, for example. That is something that often goes unnoticed from the part of on the part of the teacher. Well, Evita, I think you made some very significant suggestions there, especially regarding the way, it's not as if the pandemic or the online education mode has suddenly brought in a lot of problems in its wake. It's just that this situation has only uncovered some of the rot or the problems that already existed in the system. I think that's a very, very important question. And if the virus has therefore done more than putting us in quarantine and has made us, seek answers to such problems, I think that is something that we really need to work on. So how do we set the system right so that when future problems like this crop up, how well prepared would we be for that? I think it's a very important point that has to be taken up for discussion at a higher level with policymakers involved in it. Yeah, and that sentence, reverberates, I think, in everyone's mind about the collapsing world and how you've been so used to a system, or we are used to a system that asks us to comply, to give a consent, and then to to adhere. I think the challenge that this present situation brings our way, and the reflection over how well prepared we are to meet the situation. It gives a lot of room for reflection and rumination. Yeah, and the learning that you do from your peers, I think that's again another very, very valid point. Things that an accreditation system like NAAC can just not measure the human potential and the impact that your peers can have on you, and which has totally been compromised during these days. So we take back a lot from there. It was, very heartening to listen to the fresh students' observations, with all that excitement, and somebody who's not been disillusioned, and somebody whose days of monotony probably after the board exams were terminated with these exciting online classes. We are glad that you got the support system from your teachers who helped you to tide over your anxiety, even though you say that that's a rather exaggerated word, but anxiety it definitely was. Well, I think I have done a lot of learning during this session. We'll take this forward and come back to these points for discussion when the teachers join us. Thank you.
Thank you, Vindu. That is great. Any other questions? I think there is a question. I mean, let's, if there are any questions.
I think one point that struck me was when the student said that they have to be a lot of self-disciplined. So one of the greatest challenge, I think, which is there in online teaching is when the students are keeping their cameras closed and we are talking to the blank screens, and they say that they have the option of listening it at that moment, and they also have the option of listening to recorded sessions later. And in the live sessions, I think it's more to do with their self-discipline, how disciplined they are, and how focused they can listen to the teacher at a go. So I think one of them said that in the real class, in the live class, the teachers would be staring at us, and it's kind of impossible to be not listening or not being focused. And I think many of them have learned a little bit of self-discipline, and some of them even said that they could they feel they are more mature now to find ways of learning themselves and even making use of the sessions that the college is providing. So I think it's a learning experience for all of us. For the teachers, we are not able to see the responses directly from the student. And probably, or as one of them said, we have to have more interactions and be in touch with our students, our set of students whom we are meeting on a daily basis. Thank you.
Any other questions? Please feel free to
If I
weigh in. Yes, Evita. Yeah.
I just wanted to respond to the idea of space, just some personal experience. I don't know if it would add perspective, but I know at the beginning of the year, when my final year started in July, I thought that since I was at home, I would save a lot of time because there would be less distractions of college and everything. I would have the most time to study and work on applications and be at my productive best. And also the idea of pace. And I think now it's become a habit that we watch everything on 1.2x or 1.5x, and we're unable to really listen to people slowly. But I think that idea of fast pace, it meant at the beginning of the year that I was able to get through a lot more videos and get through a lot more content and absorb a lot more content. But I noticed after a couple of months, 4-5 months, I wasn't learning as much. I was getting through videos, I was completing more work, but as the how valuable it was in terms of how much I was learning was going down. And then I started reading a bit about it, and I started discussing these experiences with friends, and we realized that for a lecture to be valuable, you need to be able to pause, ask some questions, think about it, reflect, for it to be more meaningful. But this idea of like these MOOCs or these online classes that they want to start doing online is where students just get through more online videos at fast pace, so with their own flexibility and things like that. But I don't know how valuable it would be in terms of learning, how much you would absorb from it. Because we noticed that after 5 or 6 months, all of us, we were no longer, even being alone at home without distractions didn't mean you were productive. Getting through more videos didn't mean I was learning more. The beginning of the semester, I said, I'll take notes, I'll ask a lot of questions in my classes. After 3 or 4 months, there was just, you were just doing it out of routine. That kind of ability to continue over a long term in a sustainable way didn't really exist. But the one positive thing that we did notice, it's not very sustainable, but um, in the first 2 months of learning, I know that I noticed we heard a lot of voices in our classes that we didn't normally hear. Students who were shy, students who came from communities, from minority communities, from marginalized groups, people who are not so confident of their English to normally speak up in class, who are conscious about everybody looking at them. We've heard in our third year, in our final semester, we heard voice and perspective of students who never really spoke up in the 2 years we were in college. I mean, of course, this was not sustained, and after a while, everybody really got fed up with the system. But I think if we are continuing with this online mode, and even when we do go back to some amount of offline learning, I think it's important to think about how we can create a space. I mean, it was an important eye opener that in normal physical classes, we think that if people don't speak up, it's because they don't want to speak up or they don't have anything to share. But more often than not, it's the system or the environment is not conducive for people to speak up. So even when we shift back to some amount of offline learning as well, how do we make it more conducive for everyone, especially the people who spoke up in online classes? How do we make that more conducive? Yeah, that's just what it is.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Erika, this whole idea of like, socially what this means is a very important question, because a lot of policy, a lot of discussions happen when in spaces which are, I mean, in cosmopolitan spaces. All are, supposedly premier places are in cities, and there is a certain way in which it works in cosmopolitan spaces. With a certain kind of urban upper middle class students coming there, and what happens to those who come from, not so like from marginalized spaces and all that. And one issue is, for example, which might not be known in urban India, in cosmopolitan spaces so much, is the problem of, like, a lot of activities, a lot of learning happens because people stay back. Yeah, and that's not possible because you don't get a bus to go back to your house in a rural kind of space. So a lot of activities, a lot of students, and especially female students, uh, get very much less opportunities because of this. But with online, it is actually possible to have conversations after, once they get back home as well. So it might be an idea, like, in terms of how democratic and how diverse, culturally diverse, socially diverse the space has shown certain potentials. There are 200 negative problems, but this is one side where the social aspect can be sort of looked at, and we can devise mechanisms by which we are able to sort of capitalize on some of these possibilities of, you can be at home and still be part of it, the kind of exposure, getting to see somebody. If you are in a premier institute, you definitely do get to meet people, but not in many places, because they simply don't. They might go to Hyderabad, they might go to Bangalore or New Delhi, they might not go to a rural college. So these are also possibilities of, sort of online being leveling agents. That's a very interesting point. And what Tinkulma said about, like, now there is a possibility of, like, yes, disciplining is in college. A lot of things happens to you without you noticing, and now you have to do everything with a sense of, I am doing this, and I have done this, right? It's like e-learning starts with, by the end of this class you will know this, and it tells you 3 times that you have learned this, you are learning this, you are learning this, and finally they say you have learned this, right? That's how e-learning modules are made, and that's what we have to do here, right? On a daily basis, we have to do this engagement of sorts. So that's a very interesting kind of question. So this fear of being stared at, is that a good thing? In some sense, because it's taken care of by somebody else. But is that always a good thing? Because sometimes it might just make you shrink, and like Evita said, people might come out of it when given a new platform. So these are all interesting questions. Yes. Any other questions, comments, observations?
Adding on to your point,
Yes,
I would
Sridhar.
like to make an observation. Like,
Yes.
online learning mainly become outcome based. You just have to mug up something, and I think it was Evita who said that you're mugging up something and you're reproducing it as it is. But when you learn a subject like English, you should feel it. You should actually feel it. It should have an actual, classroom space where people come together. They enjoy, especially like when you teach drama. You should be, you should have that feeling of, appreciating drama by seeing each other, by the physicality is that what is being missing. Like when I teach my students, I am passionate. I don't know whether they are passionate. That's the problem that happens when you teach, especially English. That passion is something which we lack when it goes online. The physicality, the passion, those things. It's a terrible loss for children who are going on these online phase these days. Especially when I talk about English language subject, maybe be it Malayalam, be it Hindi, that is what it's not more it's not outcome based. Basically it's kind of a learning experience. It's kind of a actualization happens there. So such things are, it's terrible that they lose all these things. Just an observation, what on what you made, on the comment that you made. Thank you, sir.
Right. Interesting. Yeah. Yes. Any other comments?
Am I audible? Hello, sir.
Yes. Sridhar.
Sir, actually, today we have three students from various sides of India, and Amilafida is from abroad. So it is only happens when online education or online platform is open for us. Before that, even going for some classes or join some webinars or seminars, now it's webinars, is very difficult for us now. But now we are learning so many things. As Sridevi said, students when coming to us, they have more than 10 or 25 certificates of online classes, like part-time. But at our memories or in our times, it was very difficult to join any other class other than our college times. Like when we are doing graduation, our extracurricular activity may be or something like. But now they have so many opportunities and they are doing so much of certificate courses. But I don't think that they are focused on anything. Yes, we are doing French course, Syriac, something, so many courses, so many languages courses, or so many computer courses, so many courses are there. Like I don't think that they are focused on this. And at the same time, it is very happy. It was very active conversation for me that these three students, they are expressing their thoughts. Like Aisha said, I must be disciplined, or students must be disciplined in their online classes. They, at the same time, every touch is very concerned about their colleagues, their students, their batchmates, their juniors. And that she says that I am graduating in the pandemic. That was a very touching word for me. And at the last, when I met Amila Fida, she says that I am, as she was communicating, I came to know that a student who is learning in India or abroad, they need personal care from their teachers. That is the main thing I have noted. That is the interaction session or the discussions that we have to be focused on. About studies, they are doing it as it is. There may be assignments, there may be seminars, everything is going there. But they need more care from the teachers, or they need more attention so that they can do very well in their studies. That is beyond the subject. And where about the memories, they are lacking their canteens. They don't have interactions with their students. They don't have their own seats, their own benches, their own desk. They are losing, they have lost all that. But they are very actively participating in classes as part of the education. But they have to be more active, so that as administrator or as part of a management, as part of a faculty, we have to be more focused on their other activities, extracurricular activities, or some other points, so that they can handle things more lightly. Otherwise, online classes making so many classes, making so many certificates, but they are not gaining anything from this, or they may be only given only teaching practices. That I think. Anyways, it was a very nice session. Thank you.
Yeah, you quite well summarized the problems, and like, it is important, what won't go wrong is the care. What won't go wrong is the kindness and the attitude with which we work. I mean, as in, like, we're teaching and somebody has, like, this is hugely traumatizing, isn't it? The whole thing is. So at that point, it is like, we are a community. Primarily before, I mean, this is my take. I don't know. I mean, like all the teachers and students. So, like, we are fundamentally a community before we become an academic community. So our job, any communities, any groups, any tribes, any clans, job is to take care of each other, right? And we've come to a point where, like, we have to sort of like, as a species, we are in trouble. I mean, we were saying vaccination this, I mean, there are some mutations and it doesn't work, right? I mean, and there are other climate changes, there are all kinds of disasters that are coming up, and we as human beings are not making it any better, because we need the profit, we need the power, we need to hate, we need to be insecure, that's what we are. So put together, like, in the middle of all of this, so if COVID, like Bindu was also saying, if it brings out certain things, and if we sort of come together in a way, first come together, and then yes, we can come together, we can as an attitude, as an approach, we can take it as some steps, but on an ongoing thing, we have to do something together, otherwise we won't be together, right? So that is what gives us academics. That's what, so in that sense, I think, like, the care part that Srividya spoke about, like, we have to be personally very caring to each other, and and understanding, and with that sort of, my teachers are there, or I'm part of, for a teacher, I'm part of a community which will take care of me. That's fundamental. And if we don't have it, we say, come what may. There is this very, this is one line that they always say, right? Like, business, the show must go on. Business has to happen as usual. I mean, it doesn't, right? So there is a certain way in which we need to unlearn some of these, go-getter lines, and then we will also need to change our idea of education. Like, for example, qualification is fine because people have to, at some point quantify these things. But qualification without quality is a crisis, is a major crisis. And it's not a crisis that Corona brought in. It's a crisis that has come up a long time ago, right? For example, earlier in Kerala, if a student got 40 marks out of 100 in 2 English papers in 10th standard, the student knew his or her English. You could say that, because that wasn't possible, right? Like, if 70% of the students would, I'm not saying there were lots of issues with that, but the point is, you could say you got 40 out of 100, you're good, you know something. Now we are not in a position to say this, right? So there is those so that is a crisis that gets aggravated by Corona, because open book exams, open book assignments, so reproduction is no thing, and information is no thing anymore, because Google gives you all information. And earlier, our teachers were performers. All our teachers were, great teachers, were performers who actually perform the subject. You're a great physics teacher because you could dramatize the whole relativity theory. You're a great English lecturer because you could memorize. That angle is gone now. But yes, the idea of mentorship, the idea of communication, the idea of conversation, the idea of rigor and nuance and personal attention, that might be something that that should have been there earlier itself. Student-centric education is not something COVID brought in, but there is a new meaning to student-centric education in the COVID time. Maybe perhaps that's one thing that we can think about. Yeah. Any other observations, questions?
Yeah, I would just like to add a point. The other day there was a discussion on digital content and online content writing. One of the points that keeps getting highlighted there is the fact that you need to get the response of the users. You need to get them back, you need to lure them back, and to do that you need to keep engaging them with questions, with polls, with online surveys and so on, which would help you to get the pulse of the users. The same goes with television program. For example, we know that each and every program that is broadcast out there, that is telecast, is gets a TRP, and it's based on that the future or the next program is planned. And I think this online mode of teaching brings that challenge very much into the forefront. We are now dealing with a new way of transacting our lessons, and therefore we need new ways of reflection, new ways of feedback. Yeah, and I think we need to keep a vigil and get the response of the students. That is the the most important message that I got from this session. We just can't be smug with doing what we are comfortable with, and fighting, as Evita rightly pointed out, I think a firefight. You just extinguish the fire. It's just not that. It's much more than that. You need to work on it. Keep working on it. Thank you.
I think there's a comment from Dr. Parashuraman from he's a senior and dear friend from Hyderabad University. He has written, care is very important. One-on-one interaction with students via WhatsApp helps a lot. Be a friend. Also, don't compromise on that total inclusion. Yes. Dr. Parishuram, that's really an important lesson to take. Would you mind telling us a little bit, because I do know personally, and has also come to Gayapur a couple of times. We have it'll be great to hear, because he's an excellent mentor, working with students in a very interesting way. So your experience, Dr. Parsham, would be very, very useful to us, like, in response to what we listen from the students. Would you want to join? I'm sorry, I'm imposing this on you out of nowhere.
No, I'm happy to join. Actually, I teach in a government college, University College in Trivandrum, well known to everyone in Kerala. And it is a college that attracts students from across the state. I think except Kasargod I think except Kasargod district, every other district in the state is fairly well represented in our college in terms of a fairly large contingent of students being there. And most of the students are from rural areas. And a lot of them, actually, even outside Trivandrum city, in quite a few places, this was a discovery that I made when this online business started last June. They face connectivity issues. Okay. And many of them, when you take classes via Google Meet, in a way, it seems to be better because people can see each other's faces, you can ask questions, you can invite comments, and it seems to simulate a live class, a physical class. But then for many people, the connectivity is so poor that it keeps going in, and they keep going in and out of the meeting. And it's a very broken and fragmented kind of experience which they have when a class is on Google Meet. And if it is a physical class, then peer learning, people have already talked about peer learning, people learning from students, learning from their classmates, learning from some friend in the class, or even among the seniors or somewhere else, somebody else who can help them with the topic, who knows a little more. And due to the pandemic, that option is more or less closed. There's a limit to, you can share a lot of things via WhatsApp and other platforms, via voice clips, but then there's a limit to how much that can be done. And that is why I was surprised to find that a lot of my students actually preferred WhatsApp clips. Clips recorded on WhatsApp and sent to a group, to a class group, and then uploaded in a Google Classroom, that kind of thing. Even though there was no face-to-face, even though there was no interaction, like in real time kind of interaction. And many students, of course, this has got two sides. They preferred the comfort of a one-on-one conversation, very often happening outside class hours, to ask questions and to raise things which areas of difficulty for them, which they might not have done in a real class, or might have been hesitant to do, coming to the staff room or meeting me somewhere on campus or something. They felt free to do that. When it is a very friendly and informal chat, it gives them that space and they actually interact more. But the flip side of it is that, the learning in college is not just academic and syllabus. Interacting with people, organizing things, becoming part of joint efforts, all these are very important in college life. Social life, cultural activities, romance, fooling around, these are all very important, probably more important than what people learn from syllabi. Okay. And, one thing which many students, at least from rural areas, when they come to a college, when they are in a class with 50 or 60 or 70 other people, when they hang around with others, one thing which they learn is to shed their diffidence and become more self-confident. You need exposure to shed your nervousness, to shed diffidence. You need to get into the river to swim. And the online one problem with online modes is that they don't afford that kind of opportunity. So people might actually continue with their diffidence for longer than they would have done otherwise if offline teaching, offline classes had been restored. And of course, the social and emotional loss that has come due to offline teaching being impossible is tremendous. It can't even be quantified. One huge issue which final year students cutting across batches in my college have talked to me about informally on several occasions, independently, is that they were not able to go on a tour. A tour is a big thing in the life of a degree student, at least in a government college in Kerala. And they were not able to do that, and they felt that it was a terrible loss. It was almost as if they had not done a degree and joined a college at all. That is the extent, that is the magnitude that the loss of a tour had for many students. So those aspects are there, and it takes time and effort, but I think teachers need to. It is a pandemic, and we are relatively more privileged. At least in government and aided colleges, we have a guaranteed salary, which comes into our account and all that every month. And I think we should take time and we should be generous with our time and spend a lot of time on one-to-one interactions with students, just making them feel comfortable, making them feel that you are there. That goes a very long way. And I think we need to do that. It'll at least partially, it will offset the terrible loss, social, emotional loss that they are suffering due to the pandemic. At least partially we can cushion them from the effects of that kind of loss. That is one thing we need to do. And of course, one nice thing about online, particularly if they are not seeing my face as a teacher, as a sir, within double quotes, is that they feel more free to behave like friends. And for all democratic pretensions, at least in certain aspects, Kerala society is pretty hierarchical. And one nice thing that I found this online, teaching online, this compulsion to go online doing is that it breaks down a lot of barriers. And at some level, it drives home the fact that at the end of the day, hierarchy is not really important at all. It's quite dispensable. That has been part of my experience.
Parishu. So we are actually running short of time. If what we'll do is we'll just listen to the students again. I think Amila, Evika, and Aisha will go in that order. Just their concluding remarks, and then we could wind up the session. If there are any other questions, observations, please put them in the chat box. Yeah, Amila, why don't you start?
Yes,
quickly to sum up, any other observation you might have. Yeah.
Yeah, I would like to conclude that so far it's going smooth and it's fine. But I know there are a lot of students suffering because in India, it's a place where digital divide can be widely seen. So I hope it can be like attenuated in case to attend more of online classes and be productive of that. And I'm actually, so far I have no problems with it, and it's fine. I'm coping up with it.
Okay.
So
Okay. Evita, yeah. Thank you, Amila. Yeah, Evita.
I think the only hope is that this experience from this year.
A little louder, Evita. Sometimes we are losing
Am
you. Yeah, go on. Yeah.
Am I audible?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the only hope and expectation is that when we reflect on this year and look forward, the Indian education system that pushes us to be productive at all costs, to consume so much at all costs. It's all about exams, and I just hope that it's a good avenue for us to. Of course, as I said, these are all things that predated the pandemic, but because we're seeing firsthand how, say, students are not enjoying, are not learning as much as they did before. I hope it's like a wake up call in some sense to reevaluate that maybe in some sense learning less is more, that the interpersonal relationships are more important. Like Sir said, the hierarchies that we have in education, that needs to be dismantled to enable us to learn more, learn from each other, and sort of make it more egalitarian. And I think just prepare people better to face what is to come, because everything looks so uncertain. And we say young people are the future and everything, but I suppose we must reflect on how we're equipping students to bring that change.
Thanks. Okay. Thank you, Evita. Aisha.
Yes. So this was actually a really enlightening session. I got to hear a lot of points, and I learned a lot of things both from students and from the teachers actually. So I really want to thank the institution for giving me this opportunity and for giving me a space to speak about what I learned and my experience. And just a few things I would like to add from picking up from what Evita said. Like, it is true that when you're just mugging up the concepts, you lose it after a while. So what we're missing is maybe the practical application side, where what you've learned, where are you going to use it, how are you going to use it. So we need to have more opportunities to maybe put it into a application. Like, especially for me, I think if my graduation program had a little bit more of a practical side to it, maybe I would have been more equipped for working in that space and for employability. So, and the issue with that is I do have teachers who are really dedicated to giving more of an practical application side and to teaching more of how to use it, but they are so limited by the course structure and by what the university wants for exams. So even you can never blame them, because I've had teachers who have gone beyond their capacities to try and give a more wholesome education and to reach out, especially like somebody said on WhatsApp, for me to reach out and ask more questions about how to use certain concepts. They've gone beyond and given me insights, but I feel like they are limited by the university and what the university wants the students to learn, which is kind of outdated, I believe. Like, for a graduation program, we could have a little more of a practical side. So these are some things that I thought, and thank you so much for giving me this opportunity.
Right, that's excellent. So that was a very wonderful time. Thank you, Aisha, Evita, and Amila,